All right, and we do have Anna already on the call with us tonight. There we go. Hi, Anna.
How are you, Michelle? Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you just fine. I am so glad to not be working tonight. Woo! Can I get an amen? No, not to be ungrateful, right? Not to be ungrateful for being able to put food on the table, but at the same time, I'd much rather be with you guys on Thursday nights, especially you, Anna.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. It's nice. Always
Thank
see a bright and smiley face.
Well, you know what? I'm telling you, it's been a really crazy week. And I'm sure, for you, it's always crazy weeks, not because of you, but because of all the things that are happening that are trying to stop us from being successful at making this happen, right? So, all the slings and arrows and the hateful, hurtful things that happen to you, Anna, I just really want to offer you some love and support. And I know that you were not yet on the call when I was doing my kind of opening prayer, but I am just grateful for every volunteer, even volunteers who were here for a short time, volunteers who were here for a long time. Without every single one of them, we would not be where we are today. And we've learned a lot and we continue to learn. And it's always sad when we see someone go. And I'm not going to mention any names, but I definitely, it particularly hurts when someone who's been a long time volunteer leaves the scene, but not forever. Their status corrected. They have a right to their own assembly and participating locally and all of that. But it's been kind of tough. It's been tough. And I just want to remind everybody that it's not like we have to choose sides. There's no such thing as like choosing sides because there are no sides, right? There are no
Right.
sides when it's about restoring our lawful American government. So there's no such thing as sides. We're all on the same side and we just get to get this done.
Right. That's the thing. We got to get it done, and we have to know what our job is. We have to care about what our job is. And, one of the big things is certainly for the Continental Marshals, understanding the Constitution because they are our chief constitutional enforcement officers. So if they don't understand due process and the meaning of person and the need to protect persons and all these other things, then who does? Then we're in a world of hurt. And I have to say, it was very shocking to me that our marshals were spending their time in speculation and gossip and tearing down other Federation efforts. But that is not the kind of leadership we need or want. And I regret that it took so long before any of the marshals stepped forward and said, hey, this isn't right. But they did eventually. And it's because of that we have the advantage of knowing what was really going on. Because otherwise, those meeting minutes were never being published. They were not available, which is one of the issues that is being cleaned up, and also to this day we can't figure out who vetted Paul. So there are some issues, and we can't figure out why, when we did the vetting on Hunter for the bank, his background did not come up.
Mm.
So it looks to me like this has been a coordinated effort, and that this was actually this kind of odd coincidence that all of a sudden it just shows up that the director of the bank was a rat, and that the head of the Continental Marshals was stalling progress and not observing due process. Uh, you know, it, all these things have come together at this time, and I believe firmly for a reason. I don't think that this was coincidental. I think this was basically an attempt to pull the rug out from underneath us, to try to get our leadership enmeshed in some sort of a scandal or problem. They have done this repeatedly over time. Those of you who've been around for a while can remember what they did to Lyndon LaRouche. Not that we're in the same camp as LaRouche, but you know, Tim Turner. There have been other people that have been targeted and attacked, and certainly I have been personally targeted and attacked for the last 5 years. So this is not something new, but I do believe this was coordinated, and somehow or other, they managed to get 2 people in places where they could do a lot of damage. And they have done a lot of damage. And now the question is, how did those 2 people get into a position where they could damage our effort and demoralize us and create this kind of a problem? How could we have a man in charge of the Continental Marshals who didn't know and honor the due process requirements of the Constitution? How could we have someone in charge of our bank who had basically a criminal record regarding banks and securities fraud? Well, we know that we did our due diligence, and we know for sure that we really looked into Hunter's background, but why wasn't it coming up? Why is it that only now, and from England of all places, am I getting the intelligence about Hunter? And why is it that though we look, we can't figure out who was responsible for vetting Paul Pappas for any office ever? Okay? These are kind of scary questions, folks. And it's causing a lot of soul searching and corner clearing in the Federation, that we've been caught with this sort of a gap in our vetting process to begin with. So anyway, there will be more to come. There will be more changes. There will be more rearranges. There will be more work done. There will be better vetting. There will be more consideration of the various roles and things that people are going to have to undertake with more professionalism. But we are climbing our way over that mountain, and we are continuing to make the progress we need to make. Albeit we've been slowed down a little bit by the bank mess. We've been slowed down a bit by the Continental Marshal mess, but that doesn't mean we're not going to keep right on going. Because one thing I've learned in 40 years of this is that you get knocked off your horse, and you get off your horse, and you dust off your pants, and you get back on. And that's just the way it is. If you want to get anywhere, particularly in this particular venue, is you must be determined, you must be committed, and you must make it your business every single day to get up and make progress and make a difference. And if enough of us do that, then it doesn't matter if we have an occasional rat in the weeds, because we will find the way forward en masse. It doesn't all depend on me. It doesn't all depend on you, but all together, that's what it depends on, is the overall progress that a whole mass of people moving together toward one goal, the restoration of our honest government, can do what it needs to do, regardless of whatever else happens. So, you know, and in terms of me getting slandered and called every name under the sun and all this hysteria, you know, well, what can I say? If I were a person that was thin-skinned and easily hurt by a bunch of lies and garbage, then I wouldn't be sitting here in this chair today talking to you. I mean, I had to grow a thick, thick skin on the way here, folks. This is not my first rodeo. This isn't the first time I've been slandered. This is not the first time I've been accused of tax evasion or anything else. Anything they could throw at me, they have thrown repeatedly. And it all comes down to, well, stare up my skirt until you see Jesus. I'm not, I'm not hiding anything. I'm not here to hide anything. You're the ones that are doing all this incorrect stuff. You're the ones that are lying to the public. You know, you're the ones that are trying to hide everything under national security and not even stipulating which nation you're talking about. I mean, you know, compared to me, you've got so much more to hide. And I'm not, you know, temperamentally, or maybe I just made up my mind early on that I wasn't going to hide anything. So, you know, look, see, there you go. Like it, lump it, do what you will. It's just what it is. And that's, you know, so I'll tell you, they're going to look a long time before they're going to find me involved in anything related to any kind of impropriety about taxes or money. That just is not going to be there. But, you know, that doesn't seem to, reality doesn't seem to have much to do with anything in the world of fiction. I mean, think about it. They have me down as being a mid-manager of a rum distillery in Barbados.
I know. Where's all the rum? I make an awesome rum cake during the holidays. I could use some of that rum.
Well, and where's Barbados? I mean, what I'm looking at is a weedy lawn out in Alaska, you know? So they come up with all these stories and their narratives. They're just as fictional as somebody sitting down to write a pulp fiction. So anyway, whatever comes, I will not be surprised. I mean, if they start publishing articles saying that I secretly have two horns and a tail and cloven hooves, I wouldn't be surprised. But you know, they're going to have a hard time finding those horns and the tail. It just doesn't exist. So whatever they say, whatever they want to imagine, I guess they're free to imagine it and they're free to say it. That doesn't mean that it's right. It doesn't mean that it's anything but reckless and counterproductive. But, you know, it certainly doesn't make me any happier with, you know, what I've got to do, because it just adds that extra hot sauce on top of the whole steaming pile of you know what. But upward and onward, folks, because we don't have a choice. We have to succeed. We have to do this. And, you know, I'm sorry when feelings get hurt. I'm sorry when people suddenly feel like they're you know, scared, or they don't know what's going on because of things that are being recklessly said, irresponsibly said. I regret that for everybody's sake, that we're going through this kind of duress. But here's the silver lining. We found out that Hunter was a rat. We found out that Paul wasn't taking the marshals in any kind of good direction. We found it out, and now we can deal with the problems that this has caused. So, and when we do get done with dealing with the problems, we'll be that much farther ahead, that much more secure. We'll have a nice, solid, grounded foundation. We'll know the people that are doing the work. We'll know what kind of work they're doing, for sure. And it'll be a whole new and better world as a result. So sometimes these setbacks actually are a silver lining.
Well, even though we've taken this step backward, I would be remiss if I didn't take an opportunity to share, you know, being someone from Los Angeles, I do want to offer some support for Paul Pappas. He was our local marshal for a long time. He came every potluck He was instrumental in helping to educate people about the different jurisdictions. And I don't know him well enough. I don't know like paperwork stuff or anything like that, or background checks or vetting, but I do know that um, I looked him squarely in the eye, and I do not believe that he has intended any harm. Um, and additionally, I've learned something from this situation because I've been incredibly, um, I don't know, disturbed. I guess disturbed is the right word, by people who bring recording devices into their own meetings. I've been victimized actually by people on my own assembly who have had their share of secret meetings that disparaged my name. And, but there's not much as a coordinator, there's not much I can do. I bring it to the Federation's attention, and then it's kind of like one of those things that has to be dealt with in house. But there are a number of people that have these secret meetings, and I say, it freaking sucks so bad. And at the same time, I'm also an advocate that people should be able to say what they need to say. If they think I'm doing a horrible job and they think I suck, or they think whatever they think, I might not like it. I might not agree. Um, and at the same time, what I learned from bringing stuff to the attention of the Federation is it really doesn't matter. Everyone's allowed to say what they got to say, even if they're volunteers, even if they've been vetted, even if they're serving.
Even if they're wrong, even if they're dead wrong.
Even if they're wrong and dead wrong, we still have to let them say what they're going to say. And so it's really kind of like a weird, like, dichotomy, isn't it? Because we stand for people to be able to have freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of all of these things. But I also get that if they're wearing the hat of a role and they're affirmed into a position and they promise to uphold and do certain things, that's an agreement to
Right.
to abide by and uphold that particular role and that thing that they're doing, right? And so as we're all growing up, not all of us have as much experience or knowledge as you, Anna, and that's why we show up week after week, because we want that. We want to be able to help and make a difference, and so that the whole world doesn't rest on your shoulders to do this on your own. We want to help. We want to figure this out. But man, it's a hard lesson. It's a
It's
really hard lesson.
yeah, it's a very hard lesson, Michelle. And I agree. I don't think that Paul meant to do harm. Certainly not the sort of harm I was seeing. Because what I was looking at was the organization. Was the organization making progress? Were they learning what they needed to learn? Were they being enabled to step into their roles and do the enforcement work that they were basically hired to do? And I was just absolutely chagrined that there was no work getting done. An entire meeting spent just kind of basically gossiping and gabbing and not focusing on any kind of positive forward motion, getting anything accomplished. And, if I didn't ask for Paul's retirement because he somehow thought that it was even possible that I was running a Ponzi scheme of some sort. That isn't why. What it is that when you are a continental marshal or any law peacekeeping officer whatsoever, whatever your opinions are about someone, especially someone facing a possible investigation, you don't speak up to those sorts of things because that's a violation of their due process. So, for a law enforcement or peacekeeping officer to get down and be gossiping about someone in a way that would be prejudicial, um, you know, acting as judge, jury, and
Execution.
prosecutor, you can't do that. That's not that is the antithesis of the job you're supposed to be doing. Okay, so that's why, if it were just Paul blowing his whist and saying ugly things about me, he'd be welcome to say it, but not when it's a violation of a constitutional right, which the marshals are supposed to be here enforcing our constitutional rights for everybody. So that's where the pedal hits the metal. And so anyway, suffice it to say that enough people have said enough ugly things about me over the years, so I'm pretty much immune. I would not be surprised if somebody tried to paint me as the devil himself. I wouldn't be surprised with that, whatever people would say, because people get a lot of weird things and they project a lot of weird things on other people. And anybody who really steps up and tries to do anything, as you have experienced yourself, Michelle,
Yeah.
as everybody on this call has experienced, if you've been in any kind of position of leadership in this squirrel roping contest, you're, you're going to, you cannot be thin-skinned and you cannot be hurt by all of the kind of chatter and gossip and the finger pointing and the blaming and the here, there, and everywhere that goes on in these sorts of endeavors. And we just hope to have enough goodwill and enough dignity and self-respect that we rise above those sorts of slanderous attacks. And we just keep moving. We keep doing what we need to do. We keep focused on the job in front of us. We keep focused on why we're doing it. And we just make that effort to get up every damn day and make another step, And
That's
so
right.
that's certainly what I do and what I encourage everybody else to do, because that's basically, in my opinion, what we need to do as a nation, as a country. I guess so. That's my commentary, hopefully a positive commentary on some misfortunate things that have happened. And I hope that everybody gets above and beyond it within the next week or two, and we focus on building a good, strong marshals program that has a good, credible face and a good, credible back room too, so that we don't have these kinds of things going on. The Supreme Court this past week has issued a ruling about property taxes. And the ruling appears to say that even if you owe a very small amount of property tax and don't pay it, that your property can be seized and sold. But I want you all to, look at the verbiage. Now, this is a shtick that we've seen before. And what are they talking about? They are talking about homeowners, and they're talking about property taxes. Now, I want this to be burned in all your brains. Anyone who's here tonight, I want you to really, truly understand that you, as a living man or woman standing on your land and soil, you have land. You do not have property. You have a house. You do not have a home. You are a house keeper. You're not even a house owner, because in legalese, owner means that you're just a caretaker. You're just a tenant. And when something is really yours, you possess it. Okay, so this verbiage has been twisted around, and so they make this big sweeping bill about property taxes, and they apply them to who? Homeowners. Are you a homeowner? Why, no. Just like they make all of these rules, regulations, and taxes and mandates, and they make them for who? U.S. citizens. Are you a U.S. citizen?
And I can already see how this is going to cause some challenges, maybe not all challenges, but some challenges, primarily for people who still have a quote mortgage. And the reason I'm saying this is because mortgage companies require quote homeowners insurance, much like a quote vehicle has a quote vehicle identification number, you know, like riveted to the vehicle, quote, vehicle in multiple places, right? So it's like, oh, you try to say it's not a vehicle, it's a conveyance. And then they're like, oh, but here's the VIN number. Or if
Right.
you say, I'm not a homeowner, and then they go, oh, wait, but do you have homeowners insurance?
Well,
Right.
right. But you could get private insurance if you wanted to, but
Mm-hmm.
you're already covered under public insurance. And you know, the big thing is they use these words and they make the assumption that everybody is a homeowner, but you are not required to be a homeowner, nor are you required to be an authorized representative of any public trust or any corporate entity. So, you know, this becomes a game of words and concepts and identities. And they do this on a repetitious basis where they will pass some big law that is applied to their citizenry, and then they will pretend that it applies to everyone and that we're all citizens, when we know now for sure that we're not. And this becomes a more and more important matter of rights, of natural rights, and your claim to have the rights of a living man or woman instead of being a person, a corporation, or office holder of some kind. So watch the verbiage and watch your own thinking about it, because if someone walks up to you and says, well, the US Supreme Court just turned down objections to property taxes for homeowners, are you going to be sharp enough to realize that you're not a homeowner and that you don't have property, that you have assets? Okay. You got to think about this stuff. You got to be sharp. You got to look up those words before you just accept those words as something that applies to you.
Well, you know, you're touching on a really important point, right? Because just word, right? Words in general. Word. We learned I think it's the book of John 1, where you know the word was God and the word was with God. And I forget exactly how it goes, but it's basically word. Okay. And that ultimately will determine jurisdiction. So are you of God or are you of some other jurisdiction? Those are the options. And so we get sloppy with our words.
Yes.
And you know, I'll use an example. Sometimes my kids will say, bruh. That's like a new thing right now. Bruh. You know, like it used to be bro back in the 70s. Now it's bruh. Okay. It doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man, they'll say bruh. And
Well,
so things change, right? They change. So you're bringing up a really important point, and these words matter because house versus home, right? How are we going to, in 5 years, when we're studying all this, how are we going to remember that it's house and not home that we should be using, right? And I think Crosby, Stills and Nash wrote a song about it called Our House, right?
Right,
Our house is a very, very, very fine house.
right.
And we may remember now which word belongs to living people because we've got, two cats in the yard. Life used to be so hard. Okay.
Right,
Now
right.
everything is easy because of you. Okay. So,
Okay. Well, and that's true. When you think of the word house, it immediately kind of brings a vision to you of a physical structure, doesn't it?
it does.
Okay. But
Mhm.
when you say home, it's a much softer, much more malleable concept. Because you
Mhm.
could have a home in a tent or a cave or a trailer or, you could have a home that wasn't a house. It could be an apartment, a condo, a cabin in the woods. It could be your home, right? It doesn't have that kind of physicality attached to it. And
Mhm.
that's where you always see it, where when we're talking about our federal contractors and their dependents, they're here on what kind of basis? They are residents. Well, what
Right.
does the word resident mean? It means you're here sojourning for a temporary, unknown period of time. It doesn't mean that you're living here on a permanent basis. And so when you are residing here, it makes sense that you would have a home and that you would be a home owner, meaning a caretaker of a property, instead of having an actual vested possessory right, because they're here and what happens to their property while they're working for these foreign federal corporations? Well, any property that they have, be it a house or land or gold bars, whatever, is considered to be in trust. It is understood to be in a, a national trust that is controlled by the British monarch. So, or it's going to be a national trust that is controlled by the Pope, right?
Right.
So these guys have got their own system over here on the side where everything they own is in some kind of a trust or other. It's either a private trust or a public trust, but it's a trust, and they don't actually own anything.
Right.
You've
Yeah,
heard
they can't. Yeah.
you've heard the statement that you want to um, you want to own nothing but
Oh, right.
control everything.
Klaus Schwab own nothing, be happy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is their system. They take control of everything,
Mhm.
and you have nothing. You're not responsible for anything. You don't own anything. You can't pass it on to your child. Okay. You're just a worker here on Uncle Sam's plantation, sojourning for a while, and then you die, and the king's henchmen or the Pope's henchmen, one of the two groups, disposes of your inheritance and your property that you would have left on to your sons and daughters. See, everything is then administered by them, but paid for by you. And they've got that worked out very finely so that they can force you to pay for what they do. And this is a foreign system. It is not our system. We don't have a public trust of that nature. We don't seize everybody's property and ball it up in a big gigantic public trust and then expect the people to pay for the public trust. Okay, that's not American. That's not the way we do things.
Yeah, there was no consent. Well, and they've done it with land, right? And we know that the British have done this with the sea, right? The water jurisdiction. And with all the stuff that is going on these days with these data centers, right? All over the place. People are like, they're stealing our water, right? Because of they need to sort of,
Well, and what's really crazy about that is that the data centers are already dead before they're born
right.
because quantum computing has already outstripped them so far, and quantum doesn't require that kind of gigantic facilities. Why are we even investing in something that's going to be obsolete in a couple years?
Well, we're not, but here's what's happening is they're imposing upon, those of you that are involved in your local chambers of commerce or whatever, you may know what's going on in your town because of volunteer groups, parent groups, blah, 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 whatever, your church. This is how they're doing it, Anna. They're coming along with these talking heads going, what's going to happen is we need to take the water to cool off these, we need it for energy. Energy is the future. And so never mind tourism, never mind the hospitality industry, never mind boating, fishing,
Yeah, no,
along
no.
the banks of any rivers or lakes or anything.
All you have to do is get enough people on your county to say no,
Right.
and then it's no. And it doesn't matter what developers want. Now, we've already seen instances where, a county council of some sort or another has approved a data center, and then all of the people who approved it were instantaneously recalled on the spot. New people were put in, and the whole thing was voted down. So even if they pay off some of the county people and try to ram it through, there are still ways that the cat can be spun. Okay, so
Yes.
don't ever give up, and realize that the power against the data centers is at the county level. Yeah, so go after them at the county level. Bring together your local communities and just say no. But I'm pointing out that this is a scam of some sort because they already know that data centers are dead men walking. They already know that with quantum computing capability, these giant facilities are not going to be needed or wanted, and that their plot cameras are already being attacked and taken down by the tens of thousands. And I think that the message is getting through to Washington, D.C. that no, no, we have a right to privacy and we don't want Big Brother staring up our butthole. You can just forget it. We're not here for this. And this message is going up the food chain from local commentaries and committees, and it is being heard in DC and elsewhere. And even Elon Musk is hearing it.
Yeah, no, an article came out today that approximately 50% of all internet interactions are happening with bots. That, they may look like it's a real man or a real woman that has a social media account or doing commentary or whatever, but it's all a bunch of bots. So it's this whole social engineering agenda happening right before our eyes. And thankfully, we have at least 219 people on the call tonight that are not going to fall for it, right, people? We're not going to fall for it and not believe that, this tech agenda is going to take everybody's lives, livelihoods, homes, sorry, houses, I mean, et cetera, right? We have to just work on our language and make sure that we are staying in our lane and using the right words.
Right. We have houses. They have homes.
That's exactly.
Well, we might have homes within our houses, but that's a whole different thing. That's a different thing. Okay.
Yeah, I still accidentally say the word person sometimes, darn it, but it is what it is.
Well, there is a perfectly normal use for the word person, but if you're not careful, they'll twist it around and use it as if you meant it some other way, and then you get into this whole dishonest, deceitful language game. And
Mm,
what we really need to impress upon the attorneys among us is that that's not appropriate in day-to-day living. You know, that might be appropriate in your commercial world where you have all these corporations and you can move them around like pawns on a chessboard. But that has nothing to do with terra firma and your neighbor Joe. Okay.
right.
So getting that message across to attorneys and making them really taste it, you know, challenging them, making them come forward to that kind of realization that we are not incorporated entities. We don't wish to be incorporated entities. And no, we're not under any obligation to act as incorporated entities. That's important.
It is important. Yep. Well, Anna, we have 10 hands up right now. Was there anything else that you wanted to share with us tonight before we go to questions? And also, that's question number one. And then question number two is, how long do we have with you tonight? Bearing in mind that just the other day you were up like for, I don't know, 2.5, 3 days straight. So we want to honor your time and your well-being.
Yeah, I am taking a better care of myself and I'm making an effort to get some actual at least 6 hours of sleep if I can in between everything.
Good.
So I am making that effort. I realize that I need to be at my best in these meetings and in these drafting sessions. So I am actually kind of slowing down a little bit to take care of the old sod. But anyway, I did want everybody to know that because of this Supreme Court ruling and their attempt to fool me into thinking that I'm a homeowner, I've had to inform the state of Alaska and various other parties that no, I'm not deceived and I'm not a homeowner and I'm not a resident and I'm not a tenant and I'm not a lease purchase holder and I'm not an authorized representative either. So just shove that where it belongs and give me my land and my house back. So.
And I thought that they did give you your house, or that they are giving you your house back. Is that still happening?
Oh yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
But they're trying to do this verbal, runaround thing. They're trying to fool me into accepting the bait of agreeing to act as a homeowner and agreeing that I have property for them to tax. Okay, and I'm telling you that no, this is another deceit. It's another verbal game, another terms of art employed by their legalese. And everybody should be aware of it because if you're going to stand on your firm little feet and say, no, I don't owe property taxes, you owe me property taxes. If you're going to do that, then you need to know that the proper way to look at this is that you have land and a house. You have physical attributes. You have actual physical things. And, think about the verbiage. Think about the house versus home verbiage. Think about the solidity of saying that you have land and here it is. And here are the landmarks and boundary markers that define where my land is located. Think about that physicality aspect of it because that's where your interest lies. They can have all the titles they want. They can have all the land descriptions they want. They can even have cadastral surveys. But when push comes to shove, you're the one who determines where your land is and what it is bounded by and how it's described and what name you give it because it's your land. See, it's the difference between the actual thing and the name of the thing or the description of the thing. It's that difference between the cat and a photo of the cat or a painting of the cat or a charcoal sketch of the cat. Okay.
Mhm.
And I always try to tell people it's the same thing what they're doing with land. They come by, they look at your house, and they make their little sketch of it, and they copyright their little sketch of your house. And then they try to pretend that their sketch, which they own, because it's their art, right? That's their creation. They can do what they want with their sketch of your house and their copyright of this description or this, name of street and number. Sure, they can have control of that, but that doesn't give them an ownership interest in your house any more than, say, that an artist were to be sitting in a lounge at a local restaurant and should see me sitting at another table and they do a sketch of me. Well, of course, they can put their copyright on their sketch and they can sell their sketch, but that doesn't give them any ownership interest in me, the subject of the sketch, the actual material inspiration of the sketch, right?
Right.
So it's the same exact thing. They are selling titles, they're selling land descriptions, they're selling street addresses. And these are all things that they created. So they can sell those all day long, but they cannot touch the underlying actual physical property based on these representations. And this is what I keep coming back to. This is really apparent to me as an artist's wife, right? Here's my husband. He goes out, he paints this glorious picture of Mount McKinley. Does that mean he owns Mount McKinley?
That's a great
Okay,
example. That one will hit home.
you know?
Yep.
And so it's the same exact thing that they're doing and that they're kind of tongue in cheek trying to pass off as something legitimate. And we have to oppose this insanity. We have to recognize it for what it is. We have to look at each other in the eye. We have to kind of go, here's my elbow, and and make it clear that no, this isn't going to go on anymore. We don't care if they got away with it for 80 years. They don't get away with it for an 81st year, right?
Right.
Okay, so I'm on my soapbox again.
That's all right. You've earned it.
Ranty, ranty, ranty. Okay, let's get to the questions.
All right. First up, we've got Rebecca Roberts. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Hi Anna, how's everything going?
Oh, just swimmingly. It might be against the current, but remember those salmon. They make it up
And
that creek every year, and so here we go.
hell or high water. Squirrel hunting, I'm thinking about that one. I've never caught a squirrel, but I guess I'm gonna try. I've been really grateful to be deep diving into Kate of Gaia. Witness, the word witness is wit to know, and ness, the state of truth. And we all know we need two witnesses to do our paperwork. It's a beautiful thing. I have two questions. Unless you want to say something about that.
No, Kate of Gaia is wonderful, rich stuff.
Wonderful.
She's very firmly grounded in reality and in law, real law.
Yes,
And so
absolutely.
the losethename.com website, it has a lot of good information on it. And I very much recommend everybody reading it and kind of soaking in the mentality of it, the viewpoint, if you will. Because she just flat out says, hell no. and she makes it stick. So this is definitely something that is a good example of the kind of heart and mind to bring to the fight.
And she got a lot of her in facts, let's call them because they're truths, from studying the Phoenician.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
really interesting.
the all of this goes back to the law merchant. You know, when you really look at it, it goes back to the law merchant. And in 1952, they took this big vote of all of these various government representatives, not the actual governments, because by then the League of Nations had actually represented nations that we think of as nations, was gone. And so in 1952, they had the United Nations, which was with a capital N on nations for sure. And they were in the sea jurisdiction, and they all voted to open up the air jurisdiction. And they all voted to accept the Uniform Commercial Code and start operating from the standpoint of these commercial corporation assumptions and commercial corporation contract law. All right, so they did this without telling the rest of us what that implied for anything. And they've been pursuing this ever since. But what Kate of Gaia does is she goes back, way back, to where that all comes from and brings it forward and slaps him on the face like, you know, she has a half frozen piece of halibut and she's just kind of like, whack, whack, whack.
And
So,
such deep, beautiful spiritual insights as well about the name and who we really are. Just really very empowering to listen and read her work. So thank you definitely for that. Was a huge gift. So I have a couple of questions. The Alliance of Sovereign Nations, which meets on Saturday mornings, 9 a.m. Eastern, open invite to everyone interested who are state nationals. We're studying the courts now after we've gone through the official documents that Ohio and Tennessee use to stand up their whole government, you know, to be seated. And those we've gone through, and those are available for anybody. They're just PowerPoints, and they're basically built out of those documents. So those are fun to talk about and to also to dive into. There have been amazing conversations. Honestly, the people that come to the meeting and discuss, we're all there just to bring a piece of what we know and share together. And it's really good to have those meetings, roundtables, and just grow with, you know, there's no pyramid anymore. This is really a circle of people all equal and bringing something to the table and contributing, right? So the question I had, because we're studying the courts, and we're going to be finishing up this week, is in the jural pillar elections, you had mentioned that all of the officers are elected by the jural pillar. And then I was told to question that because the public elections are for the whole GA. And so I'm asking, is there a public election for the jural pillar officials, or do they put forward all of their people to the General Assembly to elect the jural officials? I hope that's clear.
well, you have to realize that the two bodies are pretty much the same.
Right.
You know, the jural assembly is derived from the General Assembly. And it's kind of hard to imagine. I mean, there are circumstances that arise where you are not serving as a juror, you're not engaged in the jural assembly for whatever reason. It does happen. But then you should realize that if you're not engaged in the General Assembly, that you're not serving on the General Assembly, then you shouldn't be voting on the General Assembly.
Okay. So if a justice or a court recorder, which were the two officials in question, want to run for office, that's a public election on the jural pillar.
Right,
Okay, it's not a general assembly election. Okay.
right.
That's okay. Very good. That's very clear. Thank you. And then second quick question is, our vetting on the state has been a little stalled with needing to have some training for some of us to do vetting. But I'm thinking you've spoken quite a bit in the past about vetting, and I wondered if you could just state those. I think it was like 3 points. It's like age, eligibility, and there's something else. Like, isn't it basic on the state to vet officials?
Yes.
Okay,
So,
so what are the basics?
well, they have to, number one, they have to be eligible for the office, meaning they have to meet the requirements of the office. If there's something actually written up that says, thou shalt be at least 45 years of age and be born in America, as it says for the presidents,
Mhm.
then they have to meet those requirements.
Okay.
The more general requirement is that you have to be at least 21 years of age to hold a public office in our government.
Mm-hmm. Domiciled on the state.
Yes, you must be domiciled within the state.
Um,
You have to be living in the state within the boundaries of the state that you're seeking office in.
be eligible as state citizen, so no encumbrances.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
For example, there are a lot of situations in our country where historically, uh, for example, you want to hire a sheriff, but you don't have anybody that is really competent to act as a sheriff in your little uh, population, right?
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
You can hire someone from out of state. He can move there and go to work for you as an employee, as a skilled employee, without even being a member of the assembly.
Well, would that be outside of vetting though for an election? That would just be the state would need it and they would hire it. Would we on the state level vet that sheriff, for example? Or I'm more asking about the elected officials vetting, I guess. Or
Right. Well, at the state level, you are going to do vetting. You're going to have all those requirements in place. Um, you know, but you're going to do vetting no matter what. I mean, whether
oh
you're
yeah.
hiring someone from out of state to come in and do a job for you, or,
Toby, Eddie, stop.
or whether you're electing someone from within the assembly for the position. But anyway,
Okay.
this is, you're going to do vetting on these elected positions no matter what, or appointed positions. You're going to try to make sure that you got the best person you can get for that job. So there is a video program of how to do vetting that was developed.
Oh,
that you can just get hold of that. There's a step-by-step module process. And that was developed by the Continental Marshals and by Shannon Bookie's office early on. So I'm sure you can get hold of that vetting video module process that'll show you how to do it.
again, we don't really have that much connectivity here on our state. We are not invited to the coordinator calls, and we do have only one state recorder at this point. One. So we're trying to help her out a lot as much as we can, but she's the only one who can get on the LRO. So we are still struggling to get some connectivity here. And I know you know about our plight, but we haven't had any good resolutions. So All right. I have a really weird question about the state vetting. If someone was a doctor, could they run for a official position by setting aside their license? Is that something one could do? As a juror, you have said that we could do that, but as an officer, it doesn't seem like one could, but it's just another weird question.
Well, technically, they're not using their license except when they're treating a federal official or employee. So it's sort of like the driver's license situation. You have a license that allows you to engage in commerce, but are you?
No.
Yeah, see, if you're not actually driving your car for hire, you know, running a courier service or a taxi or something like that, you're not actually engaging in using that license. And they're presuming upon you when they haul you off onto the side of the road and say, well, you were 56 miles an hour over, you're a mile over the speed limit, you know. So the thing to look at for us is that where is there a conflict of interest, or is there a conflict of interest?
That's the question.
And the issue is, does having a medical license or a driver's license or a license to cut hair or, you know, whatever it is, in their system, create a significant conflict of interest in our system? And usually
Right.
the answer is no.
Right.
Usually, you know, how about a real estate license? How about a nursing license? Well,
Mhm.
it's true that people are earning their living in that other system, right?
Right.
Or at least partially earning their living in that other system, or holding the right to make a living in that other system. But does that really impact their judgment in a case of vandalism in one of our courts?
No.
No.
But what if they're making more than, I think you said 10% of their annual income from that licensed job?
Then it would still come down to the jury selection process. Okay, you would look at, you know, this is a murder case in which an estranged boyfriend kills his former fiance. Is this any different because of a medical license? Probably not. And here's people are always asking me about vetting of jurors. Well, that is called the juror selection process.
Right.
You know, that's where the prosecuting attorney and the defense attorney get to interview the jurors and try to probe and find out whether that person has any kind of significant bias. You know, are you racially biased against a Japanese defendant? Are you perhaps economically biased against a homeless person who's on trial? You know, such that you think all homeless people are criminals? You know, this is where
Yes.
the juror selection process kicks in, and that's where that kind of thing gets sorted out.
Yeah, that makes sense. And would we say the accused and the claimant, or no, wait, is that how do we say it? Because it wouldn't be a defendant, would they?
They could be plaintiff and defendant in you know, say a claim of right case. You could
Okay.
also have you could have an injured party. In our system, you can have a public interest case for our public. Say that I am concerned about waste of water resources in California. Okay, I can bring a case in our courts in the public interest and style it as the people versus Joe Blow's greenhouse corporation, you know?
First.
And we can still do that. So there are a lot of options here that we have, because all we're looking for is the injured party or the injured asset. We don't have to match up the particular circumstance with a particular statutory law. We're not about law breaking. We're about injuries and rights and infringements. Okay. So this is, it's a different take on things, I guess I would say.
Well, there's so much more we could dive into, but I don't want to take up everyone's time here, and I know that we're gonna dive into it this Saturday. So I hope everyone who's interested in sounding out their courts will come and add their 2 cents. Thank you so much, Anna.
Okay, well, be sure and drop the the contact info for it in the chat tonight so that people can reach you and reach out to the group.
All right, thank you. We will.
Okay. Take care now.
Thank you, Rebecca. Great questions. And just for clarification before we go on to Renee, so we have state level justices, and then we have our county level justices of the peace, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to make sure that I comprehend, because it's not how I learned about
Grew up.
from
Nobody grew up this.
when we had our elections in 2023, when we, things were a little different on California, but there was a state level justice, and that justice had to be elected by the General Assembly. But at the county level, the counties elected their local justice of the peace.
Right.
Does it still stand that way, or did I misunderstand?
No, you didn't miss anything. That is how it works. You have your justice of the peace at the county level,
Mhm.
and then you have your state justices at the state level.
Okay, and then does the General Assembly elect their own justice, or does the General Assembly for the state, or does the General Assembly elect the state justice?
It's most General Assembly, I can't think of an exception. All General Assembly offices are elected by the General Assembly members.
Okay.
And the county assembly, acting as basically a committee of the whole, elects their county judges in general elections. They can have general elections at the county level because they can put together a roster of all the different officers that they are going to elect, and they can just have their entire court system laid out as one thing. But when you get to the state courts, well, then you're going to have other kinds of courts. You're going to have, a state court. There'll still be a state court. There'll still be commercial courts operating. And that's one of the things I keep telling people. Don't expect that the entire structure that we've dealt with for the past over 500 years is going to just evaporate overnight. It will change because a very significant portion of the workload will get redistributed to common law courts serving real living people, because we will no longer be in the position of being, I should say, mishandled as corporation franchises or public trust estates. I see Doug. Doug is on the line.
Doug is on the line. He's number 4 in line. So we're going to go to Renee Marie. Go ahead, Renee. Doug, before. Go ahead, Renee.
Anna, how are you?
Good.
Good. Thanks for sharing your life with us. My question is about your home. I know you recently came out with an article, and getting a home back can be a very complicated process for the average person. Do you plan to release a step-by-step guide or resource to make that path easier to understand for others in similar hard times? Because we know Lisa has said, even when we get a win, they don't tell us and the case disappears.
Well,
So
it
it'd be really
can.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah. I have the feeling that this case is high enough profile so it won't disappear because we won't let it disappear. And they're fighting back tooth and nail in the 11th hour, trying to prevent us from taking back the property, or I should say the house, because they still consider it a property. But I don't see any way that they can get away with that. So we're just going to continue pressing it and doing what we need to do on our side to, it basically involves dissolving the public trust interest and the private trust interest. And we will definitely be keeping you advised every step of the way. And at the end of the process, we'll give you the blow by blow as we experience it here in Alaska. But bear in mind that these kinds of property tax and mortgage and internal revenue tax foreclosures, those sorts of things, even though they can be associated with federal taxes, it's all happening on the state level. And because it's happening on the state level, there will be no doubt different variations on how these things actually get threaded through a process in each one of the 50 states. Now, I personally prefer to see it be one process and it be the same for all of the states, and that we get systemic relief for everybody. But I can't guarantee that at this point. At this point, we're concentrating on curing one unjust confiscation, and we're going to be examining what they do and what they say. And we're going to be reporting it back to you so that you get the blow by blow. And at the end, we'll kind of wrap it all up in a package with a bow. And okay, this is what happened. This is what happened. This is what happened. This is what we thought. Here was the answer. Here's what the court determined. Here's what the diplomatic process demanded. We'll get that all kind of in a nice little grouping of papers for you. And hopefully it'll be something in the end that can be applied throughout the entire country for anyone who is standing on the land and soil and who can claim to be, for example, a Alaskan or a Wisconsinite. We're still having problems in some corners of the government, making them realize that the Western states are no longer state of states only or state trusts. We're still having to bring it up constantly. Hey, we enrolled these states, so they're no longer under territorial administration. Thank you. So between all of the instances where someone didn't get the memo and where for various reasons they have not chosen to share the bad news with employees, we're still working through some of those basics too. So anyway, you'll get the blow by blow for sure.
Okay, so what you're basically telling everyone is that until this reaches fruition, we don't really want to do it. Is it?
Well, until it reaches fruition, we won't be able to evaluate what it required.
Okay.
And once we evaluate what it required, it may turn out that it's good for everything in Alaska, but it may not be good for everything in Washington or Nevada or Texas.
Gotcha.
So these are things that we still have to kind of work on and determine. And I'm telling you that my preference in terms of settling things is always toward the systemic remedy, something that will be available to and impact everybody equally throughout the country. And that's always what I'm trying for.
Well, thank you. I yield.
Take care.
Thank you. All right, next up we have David Hera. Go ahead, David.
Thank, thank you, Michelle. Hi, Anna. Just really a couple simple questions about the 50 state roll call votes. I know I heard you say last Thursday that you may want to tweak some of the languages. And I'm just curious if these ballot measures and proposed public law are these wordings still the same, or have some of them been changed? That's my question.
Yeah, well, those that were sent out were, I don't know how this happened, but they were sent out as a draft legislation, so everybody would get a chance to eyeball what we were looking at, and then they could make changes and additions and deletions. And we got some worthy suggestions from people as to things that we missed or things that should be added, or organizational aspects of it to make it clearer and all that sort of thing. And so we're going to be kind of tweaking it and refining it down, and then we'll also be presenting each subject as a ballot measure about that topic, and then a ballot measure about this other topic. And we'll have it set up a little differently so that everybody can see each separate topic as a separate ballot measure.
Okay, good. Some of us have been looking at them from that point of view, so we're just waiting for the final wording.
Should be out on Monday.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Anna. I yield.
All right, dear. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Anna. And really quick, before we go on to Rocky, so states that elected already that didn't receive any feedback or corrections from their General Assembly and approved as is, should those just be sent in to Terry?
Well, because we have to be united in exactly what we're considering, we'll have to reballot in those states that already hit the general issue on the draft. And I'm sorry for that, but
It's okay.
I don't foresee there being any new problems added to it. So it should be a pretty easy business to just read the proposal and vote on it.
Super. Okay, thanks, Anna. All right, Rocky, you're up next. Go ahead.
Mike.
Hello, Michelle. And
It's not.
thank you for sending out the last ballot. If you can send out the new one.
Not.
Sorry, Mike. Go ahead, Rocky. I turned it off.
Okay. Anyway, I just thank you for the sending out the other one. And if you could send out the next one, it'd be great. Anna, my questions are going to be on the guidebook stuff I need in that. One of them we were talking about is on the LRO. We're putting the people under 21 in the LRO as an account, and we've created a status for that. The questions are, should we use the word minor or infant, or what we were thinking is just putting under 21? Anna?
Anna's muted.
Maybe when I was muting that other person, I accidentally muted you, Anna. Sorry about that. Go ahead. Oh, you're still muted. Hold on. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Because we were going through the Bouvier's dictionary and stuff, and they said the word minor is a de facto thing.
Yep.
And then they said the word in the common law, it's infant.
Right.
But what we're looking at is because of the E-Verify portion of it, to give them credential cards.
Right.
We didn't want it to say something like that. So you're like pedophilias or people that looking for kids to traffic them wouldn't be looking for these statuses. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So we were deciding of using just under 21. So we know that they're not eligible for normal, right?
Voting. Right. Right.
Would that be, is that okay? Or would you see
Yeah.
a deal with using any of those?
No, I think that's a really good practical solution to the problem because they're not infants.
Mhm.
Many of them will be using these cards to do things like attend classes and so, yeah, just the fact that they're under 21.
But we was thinking too is, like if a LRO or the Leo or whatever pulls them over, talks to them, whatever, they would have a card, they would be able to show it. And then
Yeah.
we would link the parents to that so they could get to the parents, right?
Right.
So like in the E-Verify part, what should we or should we not show to the public? What do you think?
Boy,
We
That's a-
figured no addresses, no phone numbers, no age, maybe stuff like that.
well, in order to have a valid ID, you have
Uh-huh.
to show a physical address. You have to have a signature of some kind. It can be the parent's signature.
Mhm.
And the parent's name, I would suggest for the under 21 IDs,
Uh-huh.
whoever the guardians are, and then the child's picture
Right.
and their thumbprint.
Okay. That all could be on the credential card, which is good, but what about on the public and the internet?
The internet, you can just have a blank space for the photo
Mm-hmm.
and the fingerprint, the thumbprint.
Mm-hmm.
That can be there as an RFID in case there has to be a physical identification of the child.
Uh-huh.
So I think that showing the thumbprint is not necessarily a bad idea.
Okay.
And the parent's actual physical address.
Right. Okay. Then we're going to switch a little bit because this is all going to be used in the guidebook. If a person has done their paperwork and they're now an ASN, right?
Mhm.
Are they able to help build their towns up?
Of course,
Are they able to help build their counties up?
of course,
Are they able to build their unit states up
absolutely,
and their state of the union? So
absolutely.
it's basically like you've been saying, it's always the same people, right? That does all of
Right.
them,
Right. I mean, you're just putting on a different hat,
right?
Now I'm going to stand on the land and I'm going to talk about water rights and mineral rights and, petroleum bases and, landfill remediation,
Mhm.
you know,
Right.
okay, I've got my state hat, my State of the Union hat on. It's international. It's
Mhm.
and then I'm going to put on my local hat. And now I'm going to
Mhm.
be talking about my county government. And
Right.
my county government is unincorporated county, right?
Exactly.
And, now I'm standing on the soil and we're going to talk about grazing rights and we're going to talk
Mhm.
about fishing
Roads maybe, or
rights.
whatever the county would need, right?
Yeah, surface water,
Right.
all those kinds of things.
Mhm.
You can, at the county level, even though, liquor is a federally regulated substance, you can decide that you're going to be a dry county, for example.
Right.
You can do whatever kind of things that you're going to do as a local community, as a county,
Right.
right?
Right.
So if your county wants to, say, extend a railroad
Mhm.
to the largest town in your county,
Uh-huh.
your county can vote on that. Your county assembly can vote on yay or nay on the rail spur.
Right.
Anything that's on the surface is soil. Anything that's underneath the surface is land.
Right. Okay.
And so,
I'm going to change this up a little bit now. I became a coordinator and me and you had an agreement that I would work on the Union State. All right.
Right.
Okay. If at any time that I wanted to set in a State of the Union meeting and put my vote in, because I am a ASN still, I should be able to
Right.
do that, right?
Right.
So the thing that I've been getting lately is people are, because I stood up to do that, that they're categorizing me as Union State only, right?
No,
And I don't believe that should be right,
it isn't.
because I should have the right as everybody else. And that's the reason why I asked the different levels, because in the book, when I'm writing it, we have to specify where you're at and who you are. And, it's all the same people. It just depends, like you said, what hat you're wearing, right? And
Right.
what you're working on. So, with that said too, and also you were talking about the courts, is there such thing as a chief justice for the state?
Yes. If you have more than, two, or if you only have one, they're chief by by default, right?
Okay, well, I haven't heard that wording. I heard that we had justice and then justice of the peace for counties, right?
Right. Well, when you start getting a group of justices together, there's usually someone who is either officially or unofficially among the justices elected to be a chief justice or the most senior justice,
Like
having served.
like the chair of the
Yeah,
justice. whatever.
usually the one that's been in office the longest,
Mhm.
or who one way or another has the senior rank among the justices, will be the chief justice. If
Okay,
you only have one justice, then the chief justice is the single justice that you have.
right.
But now here's something that you need to know in advance. The ideal function of the chief justice is that they're going to be writing herd on the administration of each case to make sure that all the I's get dotted and the T's get crossed, and
Mhm.
that they're going to be paying special attention to due process issues to make sure that everybody's rights are affirmed and that everybody is treated fairly and that the administration of the court goes as it should. Because if
Mhm.
there's a question about the administration of the court itself,
Right.
and those questions do come up day to day even, somebody has to be standing there to take the heat and say, okay, well, we're going to do it this way. And if there's an objection to it in the General Assembly, well, then the General Assembly can bring it forward and say, well, we don't think that that's fair, or we think it should be a longer time period, or
Mhm.
we think that this should be under the bailiff and not the clerk's authority, or,
Mhm.
you're going to keep finding those things, but you're going
Right.
to need somebody to take responsibility during the day-to-day operations of the court, because the General Assembly isn't always going to be there and in session to answer every question.
Okay. And one last thing, do we call our assemblies memberships?
Well, no, they're not really memberships, but then what are you going to call it? They're not voters, they're electors. I guess you could call them jurors and electors. And I do
But-
understand the problem with calling them members, because then people get confused and they think it's like a club or a
Right.
membership organization, and it's not. Traditionally, in terms of the General Assembly, we have the officers and the jurors.
Mhm.
So you could call them the juror or jurors,
Right.
instead of members.
Mhm.
But
It-
there's a more general problem with that, and I recognize it, but I've been kind of scratching my ear for a better word.
Well, I have to, and I wanted to, when I put it in the book, I wanted to make sure that we're not trying to promote clubs or, memberships, that kind of thing. So
Yeah,
I was thinking like, assembly people, or, something that says something about everybody.
yeah, assemblyman, assemblywoman, assembly
Right.
person. It's just a toughie. I've butted my nose against that on a few occasions, and I still haven't got a good answer.
Yeah, I personally just don't like the word membership because it doesn't sound good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it sounds like a club or a membership, a private membership organization or,
Right.
no, and it's not, it's a public government.
Yeah, if you could think of something, shoot it to me. If not, whatever. We'll come up with
Well,
something. We'll kick it around.
Let's get out our thesauruses.
Yeah, I know. And find something. Okay,
Yeah.
well, I'm gonna yield and let somebody else. You've answered a lot of stuff I need for the book, but thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you, Rocky. All right, Doug, you're up. Go ahead, Doug.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, Doug.
So what about constituents?
Well, that implies that we're under a constitution, and we're really not.
Okay.
We're parties in that we owe them money for their services, but we're not under the Constitution. So,
All right.
let's keep thinking on that one.
Yeah. So it's been a year since we met about the silver bullet.
Yep. We've
And
been working on it bit by bit.
yeah, and we're realizing more and more about it and figuring out more and more ways to use it almost weekly on the due process call on Thursdays. And we've also, we're figuring out that now that, you said a court is the record. So when we put all our documents in the process on to the in the lien and get the number, that's our case number, the lien number.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, you can do that if you're going to carry it into commercial damages.
yeah, and it's the, well, it's a agricultural lien. But anyways, so that's the public record. So then we can enforce an estoppel.
Right.
And Lachelle on Maine wrote a document a few months ago about estoppel, and she's used it and gotten rid of cases and whatnot. And the other thing that we do in the silver bullet is ask them to show me their sovereign delegation of authority.
Right.
And if they're not using Federal Reserve notes, and if they are using Federal Reserve notes, they have no sovereign delegation of authority. So, and we put in there specifically now that their codes and rules and service do not apply to us. And so, after 72 hours now, we've cut it down to just one notice with the opportunity to cure and the default for both the silver bullet and for the true bill, all in just one mailing, because we have the right to accelerate at will, UCC 1-309, and with all the due process that you've done with them, they're in dishonor automatically.
Yeah.
So that, and the other thing I want to talk about was
You're kind of breaking up there, Doug.
is yeah, my bandwidth is low. There's not much I can do about it.
Well, you're better now.
Okay. So the other thing was, is there any better process than what's on the TASA website about the Moki process? Is there any updates on that we need to do, or should we do another training on it, or?
Well, the weird thing is that, the response to the MOSI process is so spotty, and in some cases, it's taken so long. It's doubtful in my mind that it even qualifies as a remedy. Because, I mean, we got MOCEs on people that submitted claims 7 years ago. You
Right.
know?
Well, let me bring you up to date on that. So, I've been saying, well, we can, if we're sending the Mookie into the Internal Revenue Service, then we're just directing them to do the bookkeeping on it.
Right,
And
for IRS
the credit card
claims.
company, right? If the credit, okay, well, what about for like a credit card company?
Well,
Then did you send it to CFO or?
what should happen is the offset credit exchange exemption should be set up by the State Department. The U.S. Secretary of State is the officer named and responsible for providing that remedy, and they just never have done it. And so what I'm thinking of is that I will go after Marco Rubio, and just as part of the overall blow by blow in my testimony, I'll include that as, a failure to provide access to a published remedy that is under his authority, and really push him in his position, in his specific office, to provide the remedy that they've stipulated in Federal Title 12. And hopefully that will then become public enough and be a big enough stink so that he's finally prompted to do it. The other way that we can prompt him to do it is by going back to Parliament and addressing Parliament and saying, okay, this is what you guys dreamed up in 1864, nothing has changed. However, back here during the shift to Federal Reserve notes, you set up this mutual offset credit exchange exemption, and your boy Marco Rubio over here never set up a program and never made it public and never made it possible for the people to actually access the remedy. And if you don't make that remedy accessible to the people, then there is no remedy and there's no legality behind the Federal Reserve note. Because, see, they were offering that remedy to legalize the Federal Reserve note and the seizure of our silver under the Emergency Banking Act.
Yeah, we've got all that. My question is, are we supposed to send the Mookie to Rubio or to the IRS?
Well, I think that the best thing to do with IRS claims is to send it to both Rubio and the IRS, CC the IRS, so that both of them get it.
Yeah, what about credit cards?
Credit cards are not going to understand anything about that. What really should happen is that the State Department and the Treasury Department work together to make that into a viable program. When it comes to credit cards, the person that's going to be the hands and feet of delivering such a remedy be the Secretary of the Treasury. But he was not, even though he has to do the actual hard part, it's the U.S. Secretary of State, Department of State, that is the officer in charge. So Rubio is going to have to put his little stamp of approval on it. And then the Secretary of State is going to have to put his, and that Secretary of the Treasury is going to have to actually put the gears in motion to deliver a MOCE to a credit card company. It's a bit different with taxation because that's in-house.
So we should send their, so anything but a federal tax bill, like a property tax or mortgage or whatever, those all should be sent to Rubio, maybe with a CC to Bessent.
Yeah, or whichever, the IRS or, the local tax franchise board or, whoever is, or whatever agency is addressing you. Um,
Well, again, so that goes back to, should we be sending it to the CFO of the entity and have him put it up the line?
well, you could certainly do that, but it's probably going to be better and faster in terms of resolution if Rubio gets the first copy and then a second copy goes to the agency or vendor that is dunning you.
Okay, yeah,
Because,
that's kind of what I was thinking is because you've made the tender offer once you've sent it to Rubio,
right,
and then once you've got delivery confirmation on that, then you can notify the CFO of the entity and um, and then, give them 30 days to get it done. And if they don't, then give them a silver bullet and give them 72 hours to fix it.
yeah, I think the best name of the game in terms of getting a systemic action on it is to target the Office of the U.S. Secretary of State, Department of State, because when they see that there are a lot of claims coming in and it's more than they can just add to their normal shift, they're
Yep.
going to be looking around to actually create a program and handle all these claims.
Yeah. We've also got Josh Peltier's set off and demand letter that we can send to him, which has the lost citations and everything. I just corrected one of them today, was corpus juris instead of corpus juris secundum was the first one. And that's another thing I want to talk to you about, is that they're administering estates, and the corpus juris says that you can't administer the estate of a dead person. Any administration, I mean, of a live person, any administration of a live person is void.
Right. And yeah, if you would, that is a really good quotation, and they take corpus juris secundum as their Bible. So when you,
This is corpus juris.
right. So yeah, when you quote that, that's sort of like the kryptonite, right?
Yep.
But they're not always, the way that they're doing this, they're not always administering the estate of a person, a corporate franchise. They're oftentimes weaseling things around so that they are actually administering what they call a public trust or a private trust. So they're most often engaged in trust law, not commerce per se. And just, be aware of that, because when push comes to shove and you're trying to deal with these public trust entities as commercial entities, they always have a backdoor to switch things around and redefine it in motion, even within the same hours of a court case, to be either municipal or British territorial. So there's a lot of games they can play that do not recognize it as a commercial entity. Just a warning there.
Okay, so they've still got to come up with the authority, sovereign delegation of authority, don't they?
Of
In order
course,
to,
and actually, it's even more picky and more simple than that. It's that they do not have lawful standing of any kind to bring an action against a living man.
Right. So that's kind of where the Kate of Gaia comes in. And
Yeah,
you
well,
sent
she's got a dead beat on that.
you
So
sent me an email about the pronouns in her thing, and I did a copy and pulled the pronouns out and made it more like a Sovereign's Way document. Did you see that?
yeah, and that's basically the way that she has done it, is to take the pronouns out, and it sounds very tedious, but it works.
Okay. So is that one I sent you? Is that good? I can run with that?
Well, as far as I could see, I did not read it for every, dot and dash, but the
Right.
basic verbiage is fine.
Yeah, I carried the same thing through the whole thing. All right. So thank you very much, Anna. That was very informative.
Okie dokie.
I yield.
All right, we've got Glenn on Florida. Go ahead, Glenn.
Thank you, Michelle. Good evening, Anna.
Hi.
How are you? Just have a couple questions from people on the Florida Assembly. We have two people that were vetted by the Federation and were awaiting their training from the marshals, and they're wondering if that's still something that's going to happen or when that might be taking place.
Absolutely. The portal for the Marshall Study Program is being prepared as we speak, and it will be all revamped and up and ready to go here within the next week.
Excellent. I appreciate that. The next question was when the new bank is finally up and running, is it still going to have any association with the St. Crown Exchange as far as the AFDs being exchanged or traded on the St. Crown Exchange?
Well, you see, I've got to get control of the AFD away from their phony, bank. And I have to expose the criminality of the commandeering that took place. And I'm going to have to do that internationally as a diplomatic effort to draw attention to it in order to get it shut down. After that, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't continue to have that platform and our own platform and however many other platforms are advantageous to us. The big thing that's kind of coming down is a situation where they're trying to get control of us. And we're saying, no, that's against the Geneva and Hague Conventions, and no, you can't do that. And furthermore, it's a deceit and a falsehood. It's a fraud to misrepresent our bank as a licensed British territorial bank that we did not consent to or approve the paperwork or anything for. Anyway, it's going to be, we're going to have to go after Hunter's operation and regain control of that, shut it down, or take it over. One of the two. I've got some very significant evidence that has to be brought forward, and so that's just one of those things we're working on. But yeah, there'll be means of exchange and exchange platforms available.
Great, thank you. And if I have any other time left, there's somebody that continues to come to your these calls and keeps putting things in the chat, questioning your authority as the fiduciary and so on. And I wanted to see if you wanted to have an opportunity to speak directly to him. If he doesn't seem to want to raise his hand. But
well, I'm aware of Mr. Solomon. He's bringing up all the same things that Michael R. Hamilton brought up that led to the Colorado 9 being in jail for 36 to 38 years each. And I think I've already had that argument. I'm not going to have it again. If I didn't have the authority, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't have the standing with the diplomatic arrangements. I wouldn't wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. Okay, so it has to be, at some point you have to give up your ideas of how something works and deal with what is. And unfortunately, because we were never taught any of this stuff, we don't know how it works. We only have our ideas of how it should work according to a kind of myopic and romanticized, 18th century vision of what America's all about and how it actually operated. And the way that it actually operated was not what we assume or what we were told. And so we've got this system that has kind of wrapped its tentacles around us, and getting out of that system and actually dealing with that system requires us to do things that, frankly, if I had to imagine it just straight out of the box, I would have probably been in the same mindset as Jeffrey Solomon. But having discovered what I've discovered about the way the government operates, what it actually is, the history that brought us all to this point, and especially how the courts and the enforcement system work, we're doing what we can the way we're doing it, and we're not going to go back and try to argue over what happened in 1753. It's just not going to happen. We're going to try to deal with what we've got in our plates right now, and we're going to go forward and trying to build a decent life for ourselves, to assert our freedoms, to assert our guarantees under the constitutional frameworks, to claim our jurisdictions, and just move it along. And I'm not going to risk any good people with a bunch of, I'm a patriot, here's my tricorn hat and my squirrel rifle stuff. We're just not going to go there, because we've already seen what happens when people take their passion and their false presumptions and try to butt heads with what exists in the world today. And, people all the time say they don't want me as their fiduciary. Well, fine. There's no other fiduciary, but you can go off there and join the other party. You can go ahead and go set yourself up as your own fiduciary, see how far you get. Go on out there alone and go through all the stuff that I went through, and I'll see you 25 years down the pike, and maybe you'll have, gotten through all the hoops by then. I really don't care. If you don't want what I did, if you don't want to come get your mittens out of the pile, it's your business. You don't have to. You can go ahead and be a Brit. You can be a member of the Holy Roman Empire. You've got choices. You could go to some other country if you think it's better over there. In a sense, you're still likely to wind up with me as your fiduciary, because I'm stuck working with all these other international claims. But, like I say, this isn't a job I wanted. I'm not getting any younger. If you want to go ahead and kick a good horse some more, go ahead and do so. I really am immune to what your opinions are or what you care about in terms of, what's my authority? Well, I had the same authority as you would have if you'd been standing in the same place I was. And who knows what choices you would have made. But no, you don't have to accept me as your fiduciary. You can start all over right where I started out back in 1997 and fight your way forward. Good luck.
Thank you, Anna. God bless you. I yield.
Take care.
Thank you, Glenn. And that was awesome, Anna. It's so great.
Well, Try to imagine me on that day, on that specific day, when I was standing there filling out this paperwork and realizing that, oh, this I'm signing up for all my stuff. I'm getting my mittens out of the slush pile. What about all these other millions of Americans who don't know what's going on and don't know that they should be getting their mittens out of the slush pile? They don't even know that the mittens are gone. That's, you know, just imagine yourself, little old you, standing there going, oh, am I going to just forget about, 320 million Americans and be one of the 10 that showed up here to claim their stuff back?
Yeah. No. Thank God you've got your head screwed on the right way. You know what I mean?
Right. And it could have gone the other way. It could have been that, I could have just said, well, gee, this is a tough situation. I guess I'm going to be one of the 10 people who own America.
Oh man. Thank you for caring enough about the rest of us that we're half asleep, more than half asleep. Pretty dark sleep.
And that's just, how I feel about it. It's like, I didn't want to do this. So, if you want to kick and beat me for doing it, that's fine. I didn't want to do it in the first place.
For that. All right. Well, we have a few more hands up, 5 more to go. You think you still got the energy, Anna? 5 more questions. Can we knock it out?
We can try. Let's go for it.
Let's do it. Okay. Alice, go ahead. You're up.
Thank you, Michelle. I'll be fast, Anna. I have one question. Do we have to have those forms on the roll call notarized?
Do you have to have the what form?
The roll call, the ballot that we're doing?
Oh, no, you don't have to have it notarized. You can just have your state assembly chair or your coordinator sign off on it and, have your elections committee person sign off on it if you've got an elections committee set up.
Okay. We have to wait for the new one that's coming out on Monday and then redo it to make sure everybody agrees with it and then send it out.
That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Alice.
Thanks, Alice. All right, John Russell. Go ahead, John Russell.
Good evening, everybody. Anna, the email I sent you, did you get it?
Yes, I did. Didn't I send you back a reply? I should have. I was going to. I probably got.
Well, I've sent you a couple. I'm talking about for the new public law.
Yeah,
you asked me to.
Yep. I got that the next day, I believe.
Well, no, it was Saturday. I sent it out because I had to get the research. The people that gave me suggestions, I had to go back to them and find out what they were talking about. So, anyways, because I didn't understand half of it. But anyways, I just wanted to say to the people out here, I had the vaccines should be voluntary, not mandatory for children and everybody. You should make up your own mind. No vaccine in the livestock and our food, and they're putting it in clothing now too. And vaccinated insects should not be released into our environment. That was one of them. Medication should be made safe so there's no bad side effects and doesn't change our DNA. Another one I saw the other day was the governor of Massachusetts just signed into law that abortion can be done day before the birth. You can abort the child. Now that's bad news. And then the last one I sent you was water should be owned by the public, not the corporations, and should be free of fluorides, vaccines, and chemicals that are harmful to the people. That's basically what I had sent to you. And so I wanted to let everybody hear about it so they could all think on it. Get ready for it.
Yeah.
And one last thing. Okay, go ahead. I have one more question. On the IBA, is those meetings public or are they private meetings in the assembly?
It depends on, whether there is a real cause for some sort of secret discussion, John. I mean, we realize with the IBA, there are going to be times when you're going to be down to brass tacks about, contracts and things that you may not want to have out in front of the public at that moment, right?
Yes.
Ultimately,
Okay.
all the contracts have to become, public anyway. But you can certainly have a meeting, a closed meeting, a business meeting, to discuss aspects of a proposal that's come before the IBA. And then when you get to a point where you have your recommendations to the General Assembly, you bring out the contract, explain the pros and cons of it and what the IBA has determined about it. And then you ask for a vote of support from the General Assembly. And that puts the final little gold star cap on it that you've done your job and have represented the best possible outcome for your state.
There,
like
so we just started, I told you last week that we got our website up and stuff, and they didn't want to post the meeting coming up next week for the IBA because it was not for the public. And it's like, that's not right. So that's why I wanted to ask you tonight.
No, you post your
be
meeting
posted,
notes. Yes, you post your meeting notes unless, as I say, there's something real technical or, something, in the clinches negotiation going on that you don't want to be blatted around. You can have a closed business meeting about a specific contract or proposal. But that's just one subject. That's
Correct.
when you can close your door for a contract discussion where everybody can speak freely about the pros and cons of it and negotiating position and that sort of thing that you wouldn't want out in public prior to actually making a bid on something, for example.
Yeah, like the roads, doing the state roads. Yeah. Okay, I thank you. And that's about all I have. And I appreciate it.
Eat some peaches for me.
Yeah. Bubble bath.
That's it, for sure.
I yield.
Take care, John.
Thank you, John. All right, Tamara, go ahead, Tamara.
Hello. I have a quick question. In Las Vegas, Boulder City, and Pahrump, we are south of Nevada, and we had a win with the data centers and solar farms. Boulder City has banned both, and in Pahrump, 1 out of 2 has banned. The next meeting will be in September. So, but now here's a problem that we're facing. Even though those are great wins, now they're going after our BLM land. So what can we do, or what can we do to stop that also to go to our BLM lands?
Well, if the county hasn't already claimed its BLM lands, it needs to do so.
And how do we do that? Sorry.
Because you're the actual land jurisdiction county assembly, you can claim all the BLM lands in your county for your county.
Okay.
See, so you can go to the BLM and you can say, we wish to claim all the BLM lands in, Bradford County, for Bradford County as as the public government, the Land and Soil Jurisdiction Assembly for, Bradford County. And we want to have all public lands and soil under the control of Bradford County. And BLM is going to go, but wait a minute, you're a territorial state. So you'll also want to inform them that as of October 1st, 2020, your state, in this case, Nevada, correct?
Yes.
Nevada is now a fully enrolled, fully fledged state of the union. So you are no longer a territorial state. And it's time for the BLM land patents to come back to the county.
Okay.
And they're already, Secretary Burgum is already ready for that.
Okay.
So.
Thank
go
you.
for it.
Thank you. I yield.
Yep.
Wow. Okay, that my pen couldn't go fast enough. I can't wait to listen to the playback on that. Thanks, Anna and Tamara. Great question. All right, Marlene on Washington. Go ahead, Marlene. Can you hear me, Marlene?
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Anna. Question. Washington is working on our notice to the state. And because we have many, many tribal nations in our state, we're trying to figure out today how to best notice them of and educate them. It's mostly education. It's not really noticing them that we're, taking over. It is, but it isn't, if you know what I mean. So do we just include them into the education notice and send it out to them as well? Or do we leave that up to Chief Fast Horse?
It's a joint operation because it's the living people working together. We're basically doing the government side of it, and they are laying a different kind of land claim down for themselves.
Okay.
So they should have their own programs, their own things going for now. They are included as part of our state because, well, like I've said before, if you're a Winnebago and you're born in Wisconsin, you're a member of both your tribe. You're part of the Ho-Chunka Nation, right?
Right.
But you're also a Wisconsinite. And it's the same sort of thing, you're a Yakima Indian, but you're also a Washingtonian.
Correct. Okay. Just wanted clarification. I yield. Have a beautiful week, Anna, and thank you again for all you're doing.
Take care.
I yield.
Thank you, Marlene. All right, Bob, go ahead, or Troy. I'm not sure if I should be calling you Bob or Troy, but regardless, you're up next.
Hi, Anna.
Hi.
I have a question. Like dealing with, the de facto, and we're doing notices, and we do multiple notices. So when we do a FOIA request and we request their oath of office, and then we find out that the oath of office is actually they're invalid. At that point, it's a vacant office. So what's next? Can't you capture the flag? Can't you capture the office? Who do we report it to?
Well,
because we're talking, it's almost the whole state here in Michigan.
Right. Well, that's because they're all in private offices. See, the actual public office is vacant. And they just came along and walked into it and occupied it without any delegated sovereign authority, as Doug likes to say. There is no lawful government in place except for us, okay? Now, they've been running everything as corporations and corporate franchises, and they made up this whole little make-believe world to make it work that way. But the fact is that none of them have a valid oath of office on file. Well, we did a study of this at one point back in like 2008. It was a long time ago, but we went around and we asked for the oath of office and the paperwork, like the FARA declaration and all this stuff that the Bar Association members are supposed to have at the federal And as it turns out, the federal franchises of the state should have them too under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. And we went through and we asked all these different judges, it was the judges in particular at that time, about their FARO registrations and their oaths of office. And every state has a different policy on whether or not they have to be a bar association member or not. But in those states that required them to be bar association members, we asked to see their bar cards or their, up-to-date bar member proof. And out of all of the people that we examined the records on, it was outrageous. It was a humongous amount of work. It was like 10,000 different judges. And out of all of that, we found one guy in Wisconsin who had everything together. One guy. Everybody else was deficient in one or more of the documents that they needed. And that was, 2008, we're now 2026. So that was some years ago, folks, and the situation was that bad back then. So yeah, you're not finding out anything that we haven't known for a number of years, but they're basically private corporation officers who are stepping in and occupying our public offices. And what do you do about that? Well, number one, we have to start holding public elections again. But at this point, we're having hard enough time finding enough people to act as officers for our state assemblies without trying to find people that are going to actually stand and walk into the public offices that have been vacated. Do you see what I mean? This way we can structure our own public offices, and they don't really have public offices because they don't have the standing to create public offices.
So if I may, okay, so if we're responding to this ideology that they're in a public office and now they're in a private office, either which way, they're insured. So if they're insured and they're, affirming an oath or making an oath that they are, this judge or, Secretary of State or whatever the case is, doesn't that, it comes back to like they're impersonating and misaddressing an impersonation, of a federal official, and who, at that point, there's got to be some accountability out there that actually to hold them to the fire. And with that, I yield.
Well, most of them do not have any public bonding. Most of them do not have any public oath. And most of them wind up with what is called self-insurance by the corporation. So, for example, if you are a judge in a state of Minnesota court, right? You don't actually have a public office. You have a corporation office. You're being hired as a jurist to provide jurist services, right? So you're there and you're on the payroll of the state of Minnesota Incorporated, and you're running a corporate tribunal as if it was a public court. But it's not. It's a private corporation tribunal. Okay? And we make the mistake, oh, poor us, of looking at this and it says, state of Minnesota, court of whatever, the family court or the traffic court or whatever it is that they're promoting. We see these district courts the same way. We think they're public courts, but they're not. And they're just administering us as if we were franchises and employees or dependents of their corporations. So there are really no public offices. And there are really nobody's occupying any public offices. They went through a phase where they were actually entering into our vacated public offices and, trying to represent us, right? Well, they're no longer doing that. And all they've got in terms of insurance is risk management insurance. They don't have any real deep pockets to sue. They're just a governmental services corporation, right? So if you're looking for somebody to sue, what you really want to go after is the principles. You want to go at tearing apart that corporate veil by showing bad faith on the part of the principals who are running and directing the operations of that corporation, calling itself the state of Minnesota, and then just conveniently forgetting to add the word incorporated. Okay? So anyway, we have this idea that these guys are taking their oath of office, right? Well, it's not a public oath of office. It's not a public office. It's a contract office. Let's call it that. And so if we only found one judge in Wisconsin back in 2008 who had an actual valid oath of office recorded and who also had a foreign agent's registration on file and who was also a member of the Wisconsin bar in good standing, then that tells you that you don't have any actual public oath of offices on that in the entire roster, in the whole system. They don't exist anymore. They don't take public oaths of office. They take private oaths of office. And then they just try to, I guess you could say they try to bluff their way through it. But none of them actually have any sovereign delegation of authority. None of them have lawful standing to speak to us as people. None of them can administer common law. They're all either federal courts or they are franchises of federal corporations. So what you're looking at is private law being practiced as if it were public law. And we've simply been suckered along and deceived into thinking that it's public law when it's not. And so, people have looked at me and they've said, well, why haven't you filed paperwork about your house? It does you no good to file paperwork about your house or things of that nature, because you're dealing with a private corporation that's in the business of providing government services. And it is in conflict of interest because when you stand up and say, no, I'm not a citizen, I'm not taxable, I'm exempt, they don't want to hear that. And so what they do is they just pretend that you are a recalcitrant dependent of their corporation and you're reneging on your obligation to pay taxes. So they deliberately impersonate and misidentify you, and then they railroad you and just put you through their particular mill, and the outcome is already foregone. It's already a done deal that you're going to lose and they're going to win, and you're going to have to pay them, and you're going to have to go through all this crap, and you may even have to go to jail simply for objecting to their presumption. Okay, so don't believe that there are people with public oaths of office out there, because except for us, there is nobody that has a public oath of office. And there is nobody that has sovereign indemnity. None of their states have got anything approaching that. What they've got is risk management insurance, which isn't very much usually. And I always take time to let the sheriffs of the county of incorporated operations know that no, they don't have a public bond. They don't have a public office. They think they do. They've been hornswoggled into believing it just as we have. But no, they don't. And so they don't have any great amount of protection. And most of them don't even have regular private insurance for errors and omissions. So that when they make a mistake and they do something stupid and they follow orders that aren't lawful or legal and they get caught, guess what? It's no longer just a matter of, oh, gee, I messed up on the job and, you know, my employer is going to take the hit for me and pay the damages. No, it doesn't work like that. What happens is that they individually, personally become liable for trespassing on your land and for violating your constitutional guarantees and whatever else that they may have done. And they are individually 100% commercially liable. So what happens in the ugliest of these scenarios is that some state trooper or some deputy sheriff is involved in doing something improper, and they get hauled up and they lose their house, they lose their car, they lose their job, they lose, you know, whatever it is they took from you, they lose. And it's just part of the conundrum and part of the problem is that we've got all these corporations that are hiring private security personnel, and they're putting them out there as if they were working for the public, when in fact it's a foreign public and it's a foreign citizenry and it doesn't have anything to do with us, and they shouldn't even be addressing us. So sorry to burst your bubble there on all these facts, but they are facts, and there's really no point in wasting your time and your money with any kind of argument in these courts, in my opinion, when actually it's a diplomatic issue and it's an international law issue. And so for what it's worth, and getting rid of them is just a simple matter of us taking over our courts and running our own courts. Because when we show up and we have our courts in order to serve our people, they have nothing to say. They're foreign with respect to us. They have nothing to say. It's like, you know, an Irish court being criticized by a Spanish court. Well, they can criticize all day, but it's none of their business. They don't have any right to tell an Irish court how to operate. You see? Anyway, ranty again. I'll shut up. I think everybody got the idea.
Yeah, my question was coming just because, like, what's next? Like, after you do the administrative process, after you do the liens, after you hold them to the fire, like, okay, then you reach out there to get an oath of office, and then you find out that they're even corrupt with that. How do you enforce anything after that?
Well, there
Like, my case is highly controversial. Like, I got raided by 40 different agencies. I mean, 40 different agents came to my house and forced me out of my house. I evaded, but the thing is, you know, like, how long do we have to live this? Like, it's been quite a long time for myself, and I'm continuing to fight here, but I'm not seeing any movement of backing down. It's actually ramping up here, like the sovereign citizen movement, the rhetoric that's coming back.
Yeah, well, people are getting very, very touchy about everything that's been happening, and they should. These are, since we had the West Virginia versus EPA case back 2-3 years ago, the administrative court shouldn't even be addressing us, because their fangs got pulled in a big way. And that all is resting on a court case that's even more venerable. 100 years ago, it was Norton versus Shelby County in Tennessee, I believe, that actually was the first court case that established that Congress could not share out its legislative authority. So really, the administrative courts should not even be addressing us. They should just see us hold up our hand and say, I'm exempt, and we should go out the door. Because they've already been told that they have no authority or jurisdiction related to us. So there's that. I know there's people out there still pursuing administrative court processes, but that's just sort of prolonging the agony. What we should get down to is that no, you don't have any authority for any administrative courts related to us.
Thank you, Anna.
Well, we're working on it.
All right, Anna. He was technically the last hand up, but since you've been talking and answering his questions, 3 more hands went up. But I want to check in with you in regards to your, it's a little after 7:45. How are you feeling?
Well, that's almost midnight on the East Coast, so I think we should wrap up, folks. But Marlene, you got something quick?
Marlene, you have something quick?
Nope, I yield. Have a beautiful night, Anna.
All right, dear.
Thank you, Marlene. All right, Spin. You got something
Yeah,
quick?
mine's very quick. Very quick. Anna, after I joined, got my account open for GFG, I was, I did a research. I did a background check and some personal research on Hunter, and came across, this was 20 months ago, a lot of documents that I found and that were about lawsuits that he had in all kinds of places around the planet. And,
really?
And, I printed them all out, and I talked to some members of the assembly, but nobody really knew anything about it. So, and I figured, well, hell, I didn't really understand how he would be in a position that he was in with everybody, singing his praises. And then he had all these past lawsuits, floating all over the place from Hawaii to Zimbabwe or whatever. So anyway, I just found the whole pack of documents. It's about 25 pages. And I just put it in a priority envelope, and I'll send it out first thing tomorrow to your P.O. box so that you at least have what I found 20 months ago.
Well, when we were looking at it, we went through all of the usual reporting services, and we didn't get back anything like that. So that's
one of the things. It was like Bizopedia. It was some kind of weird place. I don't know. I got lucky. I don't know how I found it, but anyway, I just packaged it all up, put the 8 global stamps on it, and I will priority send it to your P.O. box tomorrow morning.
Thank
just so you have it. You're welcome, dear. Have a great night. Thank you. I yield.
Here now.
All right, thank you. All right, Glenn, last question. Can you make it quick for Anna?
Guarantee it.
Thank you.
How you doing, Lisa or Anna? Man, I'm tired. I'm sorry. Question for you, Anna.
Okay.
We had 2 of our members who had accounts on Global Family. Hunter threw both of them off. One of them, real good because you and I went back and forth several times about him. So what can we get them back in now that he's no longer there, and what they were accused of doing was attacking him, quote unquote?
Oh, well, I didn't know about the attacking him, but it doesn't matter because that your right to have an account in a publicly chartered bank is guaranteed. Yet a publicly chartered bank cannot keep you from having a an account, they can, they can object to your behavior. They can do other things, but no, you get your account. That was
So
always.
what do we have them do? Do I write to you with their names and information, or wait till it reopens, or how do we do this?
Well, even if they had an account and it was closed, it'll still be, the record of it will still be there. And so then all we have to do is contact them and get their updated address, email, anything like that updated, and then they're back in business.
Okay, so we just wait until it reopens under us and go forward from there.
Right. We've got all sorts of different things coming at us in terms of recouping the entire operation, taking it back to what it was supposed to be, or B, starting a completely different name and making the unincorporated designation so that they can't play these stupid commandeering games anymore. I am actually fielding a complaint. I'm going to start with Marco Rubio, and then I'm going to go to the Parliament, and then I'm going to go to the Pope, if necessary. But anyway, you can bet that there will be some considerable fallout for Hunter and for the people that have encouraged him in this path, and also for the administrative agencies that encouraged this action on his part, because he did not act alone. And I do have reason to believe that he acted under the duress of the FBI and the Internal Revenue Service both. So this is it's a bigger business, a bigger irritation, a bigger issue than just the regular British commandeering of American business, which is illegal as hell anyway. It's actually got overtones of being an operation, a subversive type harassment, targeting politically motivated type of action on the part of the FBI and the IRS both. So they are now getting their little tits in a ringer, and they deserve it. And
I thank you, though. I'm sure they'll both be very happy to know that.
Yes.
Thank you, and have a great night.
Yep.
I
You too,
yield.
Glenn.
Thank you, Glenn. All right, Anna, it's almost top of the hour here. So thank you so much for all that you do for all of us and for being readily available here to help us and guide us along. We love you so much. Thank you.
Well, we're trying. We're going to get up every damn day and we're going to say we're going to go for it, right? It doesn't matter. They can say what they think and they can have their opinions, and we're just going to keep on going.
Awesome.
All right, girls and gals.
See you next Thursday. Well, we'll see you on Monday, but then we'll see you here as one big family on next Thursday.
That's right. And in the meantime, we're going to think good thoughts, and we're going to feel empowered and strong, and we're going to keep faith, and we're going to walk along together, and we're going to get where we're going to go. Right? Nobody's going to stop us.
Right.
Right.
What happened to last Monday?
We're going to go forth and conquer some more this week. Okay. Good night, everybody. God bless.
Bubble bath
Good night,
time.
Anna. Love you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you, everybody. See you next time. Go forth and multiply.
Good night. Thanks, everyone.
Y'all have a
God
great
bless
night.
everyone.
We'll keep it up.
Good night.